Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Harrison Bornett, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for this special live session, Doing More with Less, How Top Channel Programs Are Making It Happen with TIDWIT. Across industries, partner programs are under growing pressure to scale faster and reach more stakeholders and deliver greater impact, all while operating with fewer resources. Today's conversation is about how some of the world's leading organizations are doing exactly that, with the help of TIDWIT's ecosystem AI solutions. Our host for the session is Will Yafi, founder and CEO of TIDWIT, who will be speaking with two exceptional guests from Adobe and AWS. Together, they'll share real-world experiences on how they're transforming partner enablement and ecosystem performance. Throughout the session, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll try to bring a few of them into the session as they roll in. We'll begin with Aditya Basu from Adobe, and then we'll transition over to Nelson Londono from AWS, each bringing their own unique perspectives on scale, automation, and ecosystem impact. Let's dive in.
Hi, Harrison. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very, very excited today to be here and to have this conversation, a fireside chat without the fire, basically, with Aditya Basu, who's the Adobe's group manager for Solution Partner Program, and also with Nelson Londono, who's the AWS's Impact Manager for the massive training team. And the way that we're going to handle this is we're going to try and do it in two portions. The first, we're going to talk to Aditya, and then we're going to, after we finish the conversation with Aditya, we're going to bring in Nelson. And what's interesting about this is that each one of our speakers today have their own different perspectives of how they are using the ecosystem, for their own global enablement initiatives. And what I hope that our audience will get out of this today is the experiences that they've gone through, from problem statement to applying the solution all the way down to the impact that it's had and their future projections. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Aditya to join me on stage. Aditya?
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Really excited. I love working with you. I have loved working with TIDWIT. I feel like as part of this partnership, I personally have also learned quite a bit about what are the best practices and what better things we can do for partner enablement. So really happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Aditya. Really, very happy to be working with you and your team, the global team. It's been an amazing experience for us. We've learned a lot also from Adobe's experience. And I want to be able to, you and I and our teams have really internalized a lot of this stuff. But a lot of people don't really know the breadth and depth of the capabilities. And so I want to kind of start at the top. And basically, I know that, what's interesting about you as also as a person is that you've kind of seen it from both perspectives. You've seen it from Adobe as a provider of technology, but also before that you were working for IBM, and so you've kind of seen it also from the partner side or the global kind of GSI side of things. So I'd like to start at the top and understand a little bit, what were some of the problems that you guys, were facing, and why did you start looking for these kinds of solutions that we're going to hopefully talk about a little bit later on?
Sure, absolutely. So, it was the true fact, it was a true thing when I was at IBM. It continues to be true in some ways when I'm still at Adobe right now, right? Two large companies, massive product portfolios, and large partner ecosystems, right? And there is a huge breadth of partners from size, from business goals, from the way they engage with customers. But from an Adobe perspective, enabling them continues to be the same consistent need, right? It is something that we still, the problems don't change. Now, one of the issues of having such a complex product portfolio, such a large company, is we still have multiple sources of product enablement, partner enablement. We have customer training. We have subscription-based training. We have a lot of partner-specific training that is available to them on demand. And one of the challenges that we had been hearing from partners and the consultants at these partners is it is really difficult to navigate the content. It is really difficult to understand how to find the relevant content at the right time. And one of the things that we also understood is partners they have their own business goals. They're busy on customer projects. They have client projects going on all the time. And they may take out certain times during their year when they dedicate for training and enablement, for, individual skills development and so on. And during those times, being able to quickly provide them relevant materials and relevant training and learning, which is not just what they might be required to do within their company, but also something that might help with their own individual and career goals of career development, is something that was key, right? And the main thing that came down to was better partner experience in being able to navigate our enablement content. That was the real business problem. And how can we reduce the number of steps that an individual has to navigate, because even before they're even to get to that relevant content, was really the business goal that we were trying to solve, right? Partners are an integral part of Adobe's go-to-market strategy. All our customer experience, transformation, product launches that we are doing, and the solutions that we are launching, partners are integral to taking that to customers. And having them being enabled in a timely fashion is really, really key for Adobe's success as well. And this is something that we believe that will help partners also grow their business with us. So in reality, it was just a question of, at a very simple level, can we reduce the number of steps for a partner to get to the enablement content that is relevant to them? And how can they find that in a simpler fashion was really the business problem that we were trying to solve.
So that's really interesting, Aditya. What I would like you to kind of perhaps tell us a little bit about how was it being done before? Like, what was, for example, the process for partners, be they small, medium, or large, for them, before you guys decided to launch an ecosystem approach? How was it for them? And what were some of the salient issues? You mentioned partner experience, which I think is an awesome, and you guys are one of the top in the market with customer experience tools. And so you guys know about experience and how to improve it that's part of your I guess, your company mission. So when you looked at this partner experience and you looked at the tools that you guys had, what did you find was not, hitting the mark? And then from there, we'll start talking a little bit about the solutions. But I want to kind of give an idea about, or get from you, what were some of the, I guess, drawbacks of the traditional approach?
Totally. So let me give a quick overview of the different sources that we currently have, right? So our partners have a solution partner portal through which they are able to access a lot of the partner relevant training, right? Within this portal, you have product specific training, you have role-based training, you have even on-demand materials around which are refreshed on a yearly basis, because there could be industry specific content, there could be technology specific content. That's one. In addition to this, we have customer specific training, which in some cases could be relevant to our partners as well, but that's in a different digital learning source. Then we have a lot of free product documentation, which is specific to how to configure, and if you're a business user, how do you get through issues and understand how to configure and manage your generally a customer implementation. We have that training in a different source. In addition to this, there is a lot of custom training that is done, which is partner specific. There's partner activations around a new product launch that we continuously have going on. This was first and foremost very difficult to navigate, because if you think of it from the lens of an individual, they are having to go through all these different sources and websites and find what is relevant to them. That was one. Second, imagine you are a learning and development person, or a manager or a learning and development leader at these partners, and you want to understand, are my people skilled? Are my people trained? There was no feedback loop back to those partners to say, how are my people getting skilled up? Are they following through, and are they following the recommended learning journeys on how they can be a better Adobe practice? How can they build their Adobe business, and are they meeting those goals? So that was something that there was like a true blind spot, right? An individual could potentially do a lot of those trainings on their own, but they could never, as an organization, understand how their individuals are, as a whole, are progressing through Adobe's enablement content. And what ends up happening when you have a complicated journey, the consultants complain up to their leadership, and then as a leadership, from a leadership standpoint, the partner comes to us and says, Adobe, your materials are really difficult to navigate. We sometimes have difficulty finding what might be relevant and what should be the next step, right? One of the things that we really want to help our partners and partner consultants do is, how do you help progress, right? You may be an expert in product X, but what is the next journey, right? How do you stay relevant in this industry? And that is something that we want to offer a learning path and a journey towards. And that was very challenging when all we are offering are discrete pieces of content and learning path and hoping that they come to their own conclusions. So that was really the problem and the gap. And we were hearing this a lot from our partners, big and small. Yeah.
So that's really interesting, because what I'm hearing you say is that there was a lot of fragmentation inside of Adobe.
Totally.
And then there was fragmentation between Adobe and the partners. And so in that regard, it was confusing for the partner users. So that was kind of reduced from the experience. And from the organization, the partner organization per se, there was a lot of blind spots, as you well said, in terms of the data that was flowing in from many of their users.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for that, Aditya. So what I'd like to kind of move on to is, okay, so we now kind of get or grasp what the problem was. Let's delve into the solution. So when you started considering different solutions, what were you looking to do? And what solution, how did ecosystems per se help you solve some of the, an ecosystem platform help you solve some of the problems that you just described?
Absolutely. So the most immediate problem that we were trying to solve was just a unified single pane of all of Adobe's enablement content, being able to provide that in a simple fashion across all of our different sources in an integrated fashion, right? But that's like table stakes. It almost was like we had to do it, and we were looking for an easier way to do that. But from a vision standpoint, what we wanted to get at is, how do we serve each of our partners' individual needs? And when I say individual, I mean individual as like their own company goals. There are certain companies that are specialized in across all of Adobe's product portfolio. There are certain companies who are very specialized in individual products, and that's what they do well, right? Being able to provide curated content and learning paths that was relevant to a partner, while understanding that we are not going to be able to have the resources to create this for each partner one by one, was something that we were trying to solve. So what that meant was, we had to look for a tool, look for a platform, look for capabilities that enables our own partners, empowers our partners to consume Adobe content, structure Adobe content, present Adobe content to their own employees and consultants in a fashion that actually fits their own business goals, right? So that was where we wanted to get to. And then obviously the pieces that fall in these days is, all right, if I have some capability like this, how do I measure, track, and then look at some KPIs that we can see the success of those. So that was really what we were trying to do, which is curation, empowerment of the L&D functions at these companies so that they can manage their training of their consultants. And then really we wanted to finally present this as an investment of our partners. I mean, at the end of the day, there is some goals of Adobe that we want to say that, hey, partner community, we want to invest in you. We want to make it easy for you. So this is a benefit and a capability that we would like to offer you as being a much more valued and long-term partners of Adobe.
So the platform play that you guys wanted, you wanted to solve these problems essentially by trying to customize for each one of the partners. With customization, what sort of priorities were you looking at in terms of customizations? You mentioned the content, were there other things like integrations or anything else that you guys were looking in terms of capabilities that would help you tie in more closely into the partner? I mean, what were some of these customizations that you were looking
Absolutely.
to accomplish for each one of those partners?
Yeah, and this is one of those things that I want to touch on is I learned, right, and in this role myself, that this is even possible. The access and the single pane of gas was very easy, right? But touching on something that I mentioned before, reducing the number of steps that a consultant takes, right? Imagine, I mean, I was at IBM, right? Went through training where I would open up my own learning platform or the learning website on Adobe at IBM, and I would click through, the suggested training and go through it. Now, imagine I am an IBM consultant trying to get access to Adobe. I would have to go through multiple systems. But what would make my life a lot easier? I would love for that content to sit in my own company's learning management system, not have to go through multiple clicks. And that was the winner, I think. What TIDWIT allowed us to do was provide the capability to integrate our content directly into partners' learning management systems. So some of our partners, for example, IBM, they were the ones who really taught and asked for it even. They said, is there a possibility to surface Adobe content within their learning management systems? And TIDWIT allowed us to do so, right? So it wasn't just allowing a single pane of glass, but allowing their consultants to search Adobe content within a UI, within a like an interface that they're comfortable with, and they are doing a lot of additional training with everything else that they might be doing. And we just seamlessly fit and integrated inside that. So it wasn't just a question of unifying all the disparate sources, fragmented sources, if you will, across Adobe, but also not just unifying them, but also presenting it into a system that the partners, individuals are very comfortable with, and they do not have to navigate out of their own company sources to come into an Adobe real estate to get to that content. So the learning management system was key, clutch, and I felt that it really drove a significant amount of consumption and adoption of our learning content, because if it is within your systems, you don't have to go to a third, fourth, fifth system. That's just easy, right? It's just easy to consume content and trainings.
Well, what basically you described is that how Adobe was able to kind of plug into IBM where their users already were, which almost multiplied or helped you guys start scaling up.
Totally.
What I'd like to ask you about this, Aditya, is, so without getting into too much technicality, the nodal architecture of these ecosystems allows you essentially to create, for those who don't know, allows you to create one node for each one of these partners, and each one of those nodes integrates into the backends, as Aditya just described with IBM, but with some other partners. When looking at the nodal activity, if you will, of each one of your partners, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you launched the ecosystem for multiple levels within your partner ecosystem.
Correct.
Could you help us understand a little bit what those levels that you launched, first of all, and second, those nodal architectures of each one of those partners, particularly the higher end ones, have you noticed in terms of metrics, more consumption from some of these partners as a result of this deployment vis-a-vis them, going to your solution, the traditional portal solution, SPP, which is the solution partner portal that Adobe has?
Yes, absolutely. So Adobe has 4 levels within our partner ecosystem. It goes up bronze all the way to platinum, right? Bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Platinums and golds are our largest partners, our long-term partners. So what we did is TIDWIT, the capability of TIDWIT and the nodal architecture, we branded it as the Adobe Partner Enablement Node, and it was made as a benefit to these tiers of partners, right? Now, the platinum partners, what they were offered was, you get the node and the unified single pane of glass. But in addition to this, we are also going to be giving you the ability to integrate this Adobe's backend of enablement content to their learning management system content through SSO integration, as well as a full content backend LMS to LMS integration as well. From a gold partners perspective, what we offered was we offered them the single pane of glass, so that you are able to access all of the content on a custom UI that is specific to each particular partner. However, if they did want to get to the LMS integration as well as the SSO integration, similar to the Platinum partners, that was an option that they had, and that was a conversation that we would have with them, right? But it was a tiering structure that we used the enablement node as a way to also reward partners based on how they're performing and how they're growing with Adobe, right? So that was one. Now, what was interesting was the partners that there were two ways we saw the success, right? Like, okay, one is adoption. How many partners and individuals of these partners are enrolling and getting involved? And the second is within these, how many individuals are also it's not just the adoption at the company level, but at the individual level. Now, what we noticed is any partner or any of these companies that chose to do a backend LMS integration saw a significant, like almost 5x to 10x more adoption compared to a partner who was just using the basic UI. Because if you think about it, the partner that had the full backend integration, we were in their LMS system. Any employee at that company could very quickly get access to Adobe content and can start consuming it without having to do the steps of getting to a different UI, getting to a different screen. And that was something we loved it. One of our goals within the company is how much of the product portfolio can we expose to our partners and the learners? How much can we suggest that if you're in product X, why don't you see product Y, product Z? You are offering much more end-to-end digital transformation solutions to your customers. And the more you're aware of Adobe's products and their capabilities, the better it is for you and the better it is for Adobe. And that LMS integration was key with that. We found that there was a lot more natural exploration of content and training within Adobe's broader enablement portfolio, if you will. Within the LMS integrations, the partners and the nodes that we had an LMS integration is versus the ones that we just said, hey, you don't have to navigate across 10 Adobe websites. This is one that you just do it in one.
Well, so the impact has been substantial, and what I heard you say is some of the users went from being basically going to SPP and maybe having some more complexity and a little bit more difficulty to them doing it from the environments where they already are on their backends and connecting straight to the node, and that gave you more than a 5x I guess increase in footprint with some of these partners. What I'd love to hear from you is, so this is a major impact. I'd love to hear from you what other areas that you've seen, but also I'd love to start touching, as we near, particularly this AI revolution that's happening. What are some of the ways that you're looking to use the ecosystem going forward? What are some workloads that you haven't used yet within the ecosystem? You've mentioned obviously learning and the certification process, etc. What are some of the things going forward? But first, I'd love to be able to cover from you that impact. If there are other areas, be they quantitative or qualitative, within from what you've seen, and how you'd like to kind of even increase upon that with some of the technologies that are now we're seeing now being deployed, and how you see that being deployed within your ecosystem.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on one thing which I probably should have gone a little bit into in the prior thing, is that, and that leads into the next question as well. From an impact standpoint, when I talk about these kind of integrations, think about it in a large organization, right? How much you have to work and get a level of comfort within your organization that there is another company that is going to have access to your content in their LMS systems, right? So I want to be one thing very clear is the part that we at Adobe loved when taking, when adopting TIDWIT and TIDWIT's capabilities was we weren't copying any content over to any of our partner systems, right? We still continue to own the content. The integration is really a click-through experience where even though the content is being searched, the discovery is happening in the partners' learning management systems, the consumption, the access is everything still happening in our own systems. It's like an SSO based, a full click-through end-to-end backend API connections, which take a learner at a partner X all the way into Adobe systems. So we are still, doing through our click-through agreements that, hey, as a consultant and joining our Adobe partner programs, you're still getting backend access, right? So that has been fantastic because from an impact standpoint, I was able to roll all of these things out while still accounting for all of our content access restrictions, agreements, as well as security. And from an SSO standpoint, we were sure that who are the individuals at a particular partner being able to get access to this content. No one who is not an employee at these companies would not be able to get access to this content. So from an impact standpoint, it really made it easy for me to roll this out and get buy-off at multiple levels inside of Adobe to get this out, right? That's one. Second is, I think it has been really appreciated by partners that we at Adobe are investing into the growth of the partner ecosystem and helping partners solve problems, right? The fact that we are listening to them, the fact that we have been understanding that these are some of the problems that their consultants are facing and we are responding back. Third is really the speed. The ability for us to quickly roll out learning campaigns, to quickly create customized learning paths and roll out to this audience very easily, because TIDWIT allows us a very quick and easy way to create learning paths across multiple sources. And I think that is the key word, across multiple sources. That was never possible before. So that has been fantastic, right? So now this takes us to the next step of, if you have this foundation in place with AI, right, it helps the journey to AI becomes a lot easy, right? And how do we see AI? And at least what I personally am very excited about is, even though we have bridged all the content, we have removed a lot of the fragmentation through TIDWIT, the content is a lot of content. There is still a lot of navigation to be done. Each individual piece of content is still you are going through documents, you're going through PDFs, you're going through 1 hour long videos. And this is where we feel that, again, going back to the reduction of steps, reducing the friction in how a learner can get to what they need. That's where I see, at least I'm personally excited about AI, because I feel with AI, a learner can navigate the content a lot easier, faster. You have 2 weeks or a week of breaks between your first consulting engagement and your next upcoming consulting engagement, and you want to get through some learning. It's going to be very quick and easy to get to what you're interested in across this vast ocean of Adobe training and materials. And I feel that AI is going to help you navigate that, as well as interact with the content once you do get to that.
Well, that's excellent. And we're very excited as well with some of the AI applications that will be deployed in the ecosystem. This has been fascinating, Aditya. Thank you so much for all your insight as to how Adobe went from recognizing that there were improvements needed when it came to partner enablement. What solutions you deployed, which workloads. And then the impact it's had and the future outlook. I thank you so much for all of this, for sharing this with our community. I'd like to pass it back to Harrison. I think there might be a question or two from the audience that we would love to get your insight on, Aditya. Harrison?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Will. And Aditya, we have a couple questions here in the chat, so I can share those with you. First one, how does Adobe balance automation with maintaining a personal partner experience across a large ecosystem?
Of course. So from a consistent framework standpoint, that is something that we are continuously on a journey on. Most recently, what we have done is, from a learning standpoint, we, across all our product portfolios, we have started to create consistent learning frameworks. So if you are in, our sales training across all of our products, we are creating the same step 1 to step 10 across all of the product. And we are working with all of our product business units and to create their training which follows that framework. So that's where we are driving the consistency, so that irrespective of whether you're learning product A or product C, you know that I'm going to do the same steps, 10 steps across the board. How we are now doing it from an automation standpoint is, this is where TIDWIT helps us quite a bit, because being able to enable partners or empower partners to take our content and customize it to their own needs. So I'm going to give let me take a particular example. You are doing, because Adobe's in the customer experience space, you are customer experience for financial services. Our partners may have their own training for a consultant in their company for the financial services industry. They can combine, because they have an LMS integration with Adobe's content through our enablement node, which is powered by TIDWIT. They can combine training with their industry specific content, which is their own proprietary training, and we have no visibility to that, on the same learning path with Adobe's specific product training, which could be relevant to CX and customer experience for the FSI industry, and create that in one single learning path, and offer and assign that to their consultants who are solving such problems for the FSI industry, right? So this is where the enablement and the curation is allowing, where rather than us trying to create all these variations of learning paths on our end, and I don't think I even have visibility into what all these potentially could be, we are training our partners to best use this capability so that they can create their custom learning paths on their own. So that's truly the question of, the automation helps us give the content to them, and then the personalization and the customization is really up to them, because they are able to marry and stitch that with any of their relevant learning paths, along with whatever things Adobe provides. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of creating that framework and giving the partners that access to, like you said, curate and drive that themselves. Second question, and the final question directed towards you, is, according to your experience with the Adobe partner ecosystem development, what is the most influencing factor in driving partner employee adoption?
It's a it's a broad question, right? We could be here for hours. So I will say, the feedback that we have always received, right, and this continues to be true, and we are trying to solve for, is relevancy. We have a broad product portfolio, which there are products that have been out in the market and with a huge customer base and have been around for like decades at this point. We have a lot of newer AI-enabled products that are coming out instantly and quickly. And I think what is the challenge for us has consistently been is, how do we get enablement material to the broader ecosystem? And I truly mean the broader ecosystem as fast as we can, because if you see a product announcement on stage, the question comes up is like, wow, that's fantastic. I love this slide, this announcement that you did on stage. How do we get to it, right? And it's that speed of being able to deliver the most relevant content while trying to stay in sync with, quote unquote, the hype, as well as, quote unquote, the new industry trends, has always been a continuous challenge. Now, what we have noticed is, if we are able to follow that at the moment, if we, within the 6 month to 3 month cycles, that is where the adoption truly comes up, because people, individuals, consultants want to understand what is the latest and the greatest, and how do I get up to speed on that, right? So that's one. The third is, what we have noticed is trying to follow our own business growth trajectories. What we have noticed is there are, just like with any particular company, some of our products are on the rise. We are really closing a lot of deals with them. Do we have the relevant content to really align with that expansion of certain product categories? And that is what drives the adoption. We personally have been surprised quite a lot. The one benefit of enabling partners is, when we see the metrics behind the scenes, we don't have some perspectives that this is probably the learning paths that would have the most adoption. But then we get surprised that, wow, we had no idea that people actually are picking up a certain different training content, and that's happening a lot more. And that's where we start to unpack that, is this because this is a certain partner's business goals and that's what driving it, versus how much is happening because it's just aligned with the broader industry trends.
Absolutely. Well, Aditya, thank you so much. And I see that we are having some more questions roll in, but in the interest of time, we want to make sure we can transition over to our next speaker. Please keep the questions coming in. We really appreciate them. We will try to get to everything during today's session at the end. But if not, we'll make sure to clock them and provide information after today's session. But Aditya, thank you so much for all these valuable insights. Really excited to hear how Adobe is empowering your partners at scale with the help of TIDWITs platform and AI solutions.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be here, and I'm glad I could share some nuggets that I've been in the in the weeds with on a day-to-day basis. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now let's continue the conversation with another industry leader. So as we bring back in Will, and joining us next is Nelson Londono from AWS, who will take us inside AWS's ecosystem approach, including how they are scaling learning and certifications across global partner networks, and what that role of automation and ecosystem AI is playing into their success, or how it's playing into their success.
Thanks, Harrison. Wow, that was amazing. And as will be this next session, I'm sure Nelson has been, at the forefront of launching this program within AWS. Nelson, welcome. It's amazing to have you on.
Hi, Will, and thanks for the invitation. Very excited to share what we have learned in these 3 years with you.
I'd love for people to also gain insight. When I have to say this, but when I started working with AWS, I knew you guys were an 800-pound gorilla. But then when you start working, you really know what it means, and it's been fascinating. Now, interestingly enough, it's slightly different from the experience that we just had, or that we've both listened to Aditya describing, which is much more partner orientated. So I want to kind of start with this part. This interestingly from AWS came from the enterprise team as the massive training initiative. So I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit of background of where this initiative started with AWS, and then we can kind of see what the problems were and the solutions and impact. But could you kind of give us a little bit of a background as to how this initiative started?
Sure, Will, and as you mentioned with Aditya, the challenge was kind of the same, but we have a different approach. So from the enterprise team, like I belong to the sales team in AWS in Latin America. We have a challenge. We have a lack of talent in the region that our customers were asking, hey, I need help seeding the knowledge in broad audiences. So I have more developers, more architects, more people interested in study cloud, right? So I'm talking about 3-4 years ago, we started this team, and our mission was to democratize access for free and in local languages to broad audiences. That's why we are called Massive Training Team. So we have many assets inside and outside AWS that help our future students to gain that access, but they don't know where to go because there are many repositories. So that's why we start looking for solutions that will allow us to democratize that access to the future students.
So that team was created with the mission to massify training all over the region which you were focused on. So what were the problems? I mean, you guys have a lot of platforms, and you guys actually sell platforms. I mean, this is clear. So what were the problems that you couldn't solve internally that you started looking for solutions outside, and then you came upon us? But what were the issues you couldn't solve with what you had?
Well, the first issue is we have, as I was mentioning, different repositories. We have, from our training and certification team, we have excellent content in different languages, but they are in a platform. And then I have local initiatives from my technical teams creating content and maybe uploading it in a streaming channel, right? And then we have internal events that after the event we make them public, and this valuable content that I wanted to have it all together in one single site so I can share with the audiences and they can start using it and learning. But when somebody that doesn't know AWS want to study, they didn't know where to go. So that was our approach. Like, a where can I find a solution that help me connect all of these sources of content, and I can put training paths available for people that are not technical, they want to start a journey into the cloud, starting something, and I can give them the first step by, hey, click here and start learning.
That's interesting. So what were the first steps that, what were the first things that you did, and did they work? Did they not work before you got to the ecosystem? And how did you get to the ecosystem approach?
Yeah, so the first step when I first started in this job, we have Excel list with all of the links of where I want people to go and start studying, and we create some study guides with content in Portuguese or Spanish that we can share to an alliance, and my partners are, for example, universities or government agencies or NGOs, and they say, hey Nelson, I need something for my students in accountant or in business administration, that they get a little flavor of cloud. What do you have? So at the beginning, I will just share a list with classes that they can go and click, and some of them will drive them to the skill builder platform, that is the AWS training certification platform. Some of them will be a YouTube video on how digital transformation helps the SMBs in the region, right? So it was multiple sources in an Excel.
and then what were the things that you did after the Excel? I mean, did you jump straight into the ecosystem at that point?
No. So later, so I start working with some training partners from AWS that have some solutions. They deliver training on behalf of AWS to our customers, partners, and general population. And I say, hey, I have this problem. What do you have? So we start looking at some LMS they had, right? And they offer, hey, you can have your own LMS with these contents here and there. And we started using those type of solutions. But we start, we keep facing some challenges with those solutions, right? For example, they will take 3-4 weeks to develop a landing page for a university with my content, right? So it was the time to market. It was not optimal for what we wanted to do. That it was go massive, go broad with a lot of alliances.
So how did the ecosystem solve those problems for you? Like
Yeah.
you got to the ecosystem, and then our people met, and then what happened then? I mean, it the love at first sight? I mean, what happened?
Oh no, come on.
And
It was well, I have to say, like 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about ecosystems. I didn't know what this platform could do for me, right? Until I sat down with you guys and I start to see the big picture. And you know eh, so the first thing that I got in love with TIDWIT was, first, they can connect my multiple source of contents uh, into one single repository, to put it that way. So the ecosystem allow me to bring my YouTube videos. We work with our training and certification team to make TIDWIT a digital training partner, so you guys can have access to all of my repositories from training and certification that I can use for free for my plans in Spanish and Portuguese, right? So that was wow. I can connect contents, bring it to the ecosystem. And then the notes was the second thing. I said, okay, so I can only manage, you know learning learning paths at the ecosystem level, and I can say where that learning path goes. Oh, this goes to this university, this goes to this NGO, this goes to this customer, right? So that was a when I fell in love with Tidwit, when I can do that flexibility.
so how much time, like, did it change? I mean, if it was taking you 4 weeks or more to do that static kind of web pages on LMSs, etc., what was the ecosystem? How did you see the difference between that and what the ecosystem was providing you?
Yeah, so I was saying that it usually take me 3 to 4 weeks for other providers to provide me a, a a landing page. When I move into the ecosystem, in I can have one note spin up in minutes, but I have to do some customization for my customer with image, with text, kind of get their branding into my landing page, because that's what I wanted to give them, their customization, and that they feel the training program was their own. They have ownership of it. So I can do it in 1 to 2 days. In 1 to 2 days, and I can have some draft to go to my customer and say, hey, this is what we want to do. I want to give you this landing page with my contents so you can make it your own and go to broad audience directly.
Well, what's fascinating is I just heard you say that you would actually take the draft node and quote unquote sell it to the customer, to the enterprise customer. So did the ecosystem kind of go into your sales process somehow? Because this is, I can tell you, I mean, as one of the founders of TIDWITs, that was not our idea. It was not, but I love it when I see it from the customer doing stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we see it as AWS, as we're customer obsessed, as everybody knows. AWS is customer obsessed. So whenever we go with solutions that our customers didn't even know they needed, right? So when I go and they ask me for content, everybody wants content. But when I go with a Twitch and I said, okay, not only the content, but I'm going to give you a landing that is co-branded, AWS and the university or the government entity, and they see their logos, and I say, hey, this is the training paths and this is the kind of reports you can have if we go together. They said, oh yeah, this is great. Where do I sign? How can we make this bigger, right?
So it became almost like a competitive differentiator between what you were offering some of these organizations. Versus, let's say, some other organization that didn't have this level of customizability with the end customer. So what would you say, Nelson, was the impact for some of these organizations? Like, what was it like before, and what was it like after you started deploying these nodes and these customizable kind of landings to each one of these customers, I suppose. And then I want to ask you one more question about this after, which is what it meant to your backend. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So Will, when we first started the team, we wanted to do, some general landing pages with content for university students, content for SMBs, content for startups, general audience that wanted to do achieve in their career, right? But because of the time to market, 3-4 weeks to create each of these, we were just planning to do 6 to 7 alliances with big partners or big customer of us, to help us promote the access to those contents. When me and the team understood the ecosystem and the possibilities we have with the nodes, uh, we changed our strategy. Instead of going for 10, we ended up with 40 alliances where we work together with the customer, customize the landing page, put their logos, and start doing promotion of their nodes, so people in their own ecosystem will go and register to have access to our content. So we moved from a plan from 10 customers that we aim into 2023 to 40.
That's fascinating. So not only were you able to push out the nodes to those enterprises, you were able to go through them and do marketing downstream. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's very unique. In other words, this through model that helps you basically empower those enterprises to scale up their own go-to-markets downstream is pretty unique. Can you
Yes.
give us a little bit more feedback about this?
Yeah, so Will, so you have to understand that our my team mission is not to sell training. We don't sell training. We just democratize it. So we go, we cannot do it alone. We go with our alliances in this case. It can be a customer, it can be an NGO that they share the same mission. Let's democratize access. So if I'm working with a government that they want to, hey, I want my city to be more tech savvy, have more access to knowledge. What can you do for me, AWS? So we can go with this with a node. Hey, you know what? I'm going to create a node for you. You know, as part of our commercial relationship, and you can use it to put it in your public pages, so people can actually know that there is free access to cloud content and Gen AI content. But to go and tell their SMBs in the city or the students, hey, I have this with my alliance with AWS. You can have access to this content.
So you launched the node, and you launched the node with learning, but then you also empowered it with some other workloads, one of which was this marketing workload that you could push the marketing, sort of like a marketing in a box from AWS down to the node, to the specific partner node. And from that node, you help massify that.
Correct.
Does that describe it well? And the other question I have to follow up on that is, what other workloads have you used through the node that has helped you adopt more and more of this usage?
Yeah. So the main driver of usage is the live events. We can program at ecosystem level or node level events that our allies can use to promote. And I go back to the city government as the example. They say, okay, I'm going to have an expert talking about generative AI on AWS next Monday, right? So they can create campaigns in the node or outside the node to drive people to that event. The event usually is short, so we can, uh, uh, get the people excited about Gen AI, and then we drive them to study the Gen AI training path that we have in the node, right? So the best, the workload that we use the most is the live events that we can host inside the ecosystem, so people come see us, meet what we have here, and then they can go and register in the learning paths.
That's fascinating. The one, so you've used the learning workloads, you've used the marketing workloads through the nodes, you've used the live events. If I'm not mistaken, you've also used like voucher distribution through the nodes as well. I'd love to, in the few minutes we have left, now that you've kind of maximized or are maximizing the use of the ecosystem within the AWS environment, how do you see the outlook towards the future? And particularly with everything that's happening around AI, et cetera. I'd love to get some of your feedback on that, because I know you guys have been thinking a lot about that.
I see on AI inside the ecosystem. I see two big wins, like or two big features that our students will love. Is the agent, uh, uh, that they can go and ask questions about all of the content we have inside the ecosystem. So remember, we have students learning about Gen AI, learning about cloud, right? And when you study asynchronically with no instructor, you may have questions, and we're getting this agent to help them as the instructor, solving questions that they have on the go. But the next one that I see is, how can we help these students prepare for the first certification either in cloud practitioner or AI practitioner. Those are our entry level certifications of the industry. So I see this agent helping them prepare the certification and get them ready to go and take the exam. So that I think that's something I would like to see soon.
Well, I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about, what the scope, the hundreds of thousands of people that you guys have pulled into the ecosystem, which has been massive by any measure. I thank you first, Nelson, for this amazing insight. What I would love now is to bring back in Harrison for some questions from some audience questions, because I'm sure there's some that that would like to learn more about AWS's experience. Harrison?
Yep, absolutely. So I think we can bring back in Aditya as well. I have some questions that pertain to both AWS and Adobe.
Sure.
That first question is, how did you overcome the concerns of internal LMS leadership with sharing learning content with external partners and the perceived risk of exposing insights to non-partners or competitors?
That one is for me or for?
That can really be applied to both. So Nelson, maybe you go first, and then we'll pass it over to Aditya.
Yeah, Harrison, in my case, all of the content I use is public, right? I don't connect anything internal of AWS. That's why TIDWIT is a digital training partner for us. So, I don't face that concern. So, because my contents are public, the ecosystem, what is allowing me is to create a curated content and learning paths using those sources. So I don't have that exposure in this case.
I can, yeah. So for our content, there were basically two levels of restrictions, right? One was that we need the company to be able to, like, only the partner should be able to restrict, to be able to access the information. And then secondly, we are not copying any content over. So from an access standpoint, TIDWIT was able to integrate with our existing LMS and SSO processes in place so that the partners and anyone with a domain or a user at the partner are the only ones who are able to access the content. So TIDWIT was we are not just doing content to content backend integration, but also we were able to do that same level of user authentication as well. And then secondly, the comfort really came from the fact that the consumption of the content is still happening within our systems. All the way through experience into Adobe system was still in place. So, and the fact that that was the experience that was being offered to partners was something that really helped soothe any concerns within the company, is how I would put it.
All right. Thank you, Aditya. We have two more questions. First one is going to be towards Adobe, then the second one towards AWS. So Aditya, are there any upcoming innovations or integrations between Adobe and TIDWIT that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the, it's something that we are probably going to start exploring very soon, is the ability to use AI for learning feedback and enablement feedback. We have very standardized assessment processes in place, right? Multiple choice questions, take an exam, all of that to show that you have learned the stuff, right? But we want to be able to take this to partners where we have AI-enabled assessments. Maybe it is an assessment of a recording or a video or a case study, and being able to quickly do that at scale. That is the real key thing over here. Being able to do that at scale is something that we are really excited about, because assessment, being able to customize content delivery and assessment of that specific one to the individual needs is something that is going to be really key.
Awesome, thank you. And then finally, Nelson, question for you. How do you manage content governance and compliance across such a distributed and flexible ecosystem, especially with so many nodes, learning paths, and partner contributions happening all at the same time?
Yeah, so this is a learning we have during these 3 years. At the beginning, we were a little bit flexible on the contents at the node level. So we were allowing our partners to, hey, I have a video from our CEO talking about digital transformation, and we were starting to connect those at the node level. But few months inside these programs, we learned that it was very hard to manage. So now what we're doing is, at the ecosystem level, we manage our libraries, and those are the only libraries that will be pushed into the nodes. So I can have control of what content is being used at the 60, 70 nodes that I have, right? I can depreciate content. In technology, one content doesn't last that long, so I can start, replacing with new content in my learning paths without affecting the nodes. So now our approach is, let's manage it at the node level, at the ecosystem level. Uh, uh, 2, 3 people are accountable for that content, and we push it down to the nodes.
I do have one. I do have one question, because I know that this event was doing a lot more with less, and I'd love for both of you to basically share with us how the ecosystem approach and the solutions you've deployed have allowed you to do more with less, considering that, as we all know, economic times sometimes, they're up and down, etc. And a lot of partner teams, a lot of alliance teams are being forced to reach higher goals, but with less resources. Could you give us a little bit insight around each one of your approach? Perhaps Aditya, you could start off, and then Nelson.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give some numbers, right? I don't think I've shared any. We have around 25 to 30 platinum partners, and we have approximately 50 to 70 gold partners right now. So these are the partners who have access to the enablement node as a partner benefit, right? Imagine us trying to create curated learning paths for approximately 100 partners times the Adobe product portfolio times the different roles and levels of training that we have available. It's impossible. We're a small team. We are working across all of Adobe's internal teams to get content and surface it into partners, right? So this is where the true doing more with less, we are still able to provide that elevated partner experience, being able to empower partners so that they are able to meet and consume our enablement content based on their business goals and business needs, while still being able to continuously deliver and a throughput of continuous content delivery that is going on all the time is something that could have only been possible with this kind of like a flexible platform that TIDWIT offers us, while still getting into their LMS systems, while still offering a unified single pane of management, while still being able to provide a capability that their own L&D folks and executives are able to track progress of training of their employees, right? I just listed out 5, 6, 7 things. And if you imagine how, if you think about how small my team is here at Adobe, it is unbelievable that we are able to deliver that.
Thank you, Aditya. Nelson?
Yes, Will. As we mentioned before, I was planning to have, 10, 12 alliances during the year. Now I'm managing 40 different alliances that are helping me to reach more and more students, engage them in trainings, engage them with my live sessions, with less resources, because I have everything inside my ecosystem. So I don't have to control 40 different landing pages. I just control my ecosystem and go broader and democratize the access to this content.
Well, guys, this has been an amazing session. Thank you both. Thank you, Aditya, for all your insight in terms of how Adobe is utilizing the ecosystem platform to push out, for its partner community. Thank you, Nelson, for sharing with us how AWS is able to reach out through its ecosystem to its alliances and its enterprise customers and associations. It has been an amazingly fulfilling experience for me to have you both here. So thank you both. And for all the audience, if you have any further questions, please make sure that you reach out to us, and we will pass them along to either Nelson or Aditya. Harrison, as the Master of Ceremonies, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you, guys.
Yep, absolutely. And really just to close things out, here at TIDWIT, we really believe that doing more with less is more than just a slogan, but rather a strategic imperative. We hope today's session was extremely valuable to showcase how ecosystem AI is helping lead those enterprises and turn that vision into action. So we look forward to really continuing this conversation and exploring how smart ecosystem solutions can help your organization scale impact both efficiently and intelligently. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.